So good morning and welcome to today's webinar with our vendor partner Cymulate on breach and attack simulation made simple. So just a quick overview of how today's going to go. We'll do the welcome and logistics, have a couple of things for you guys. We'll dive into the presenter intros, and then Rich will give us a Cymulate overview and he'll pass it to Mike to do the demo, and then we'll cover the Q&A at the end. So I am Mallory Butchram. I am the marketing coordinator at Keller Schroeder, and I work with the Impact Growth Group. And I also want to remind you about your free gift for attending. So if you stay for the duration of our webinar, we'll send you a gift card for ice cream at the end. And if you, to help us start a conversation with the Q&A, if you are one of the first to engage with our team by asking a question in the chat during the webinar, you will receive a wireless charger as a thank you gift. And then our experts also on the call today, we have Rich McGrath. He is an enterprise channel account manager with Cymulate. And Rich joined Cymulate in January of this year after 15 years in distribution with Ingram Micro in various field sales and business development roles. Rich is excited about the partnership and is looking forward to bringing additional value to Keller Schroeder's go-to market strategy with the Cymulate platform. Also on the call, we have Mike Dinapoli, and Mike is a solutions architect at Cymulate. He has spent over 2 decades working with companies from mom and pop shops to Fortune 100 organizations, advising on issues from the business continuity planning to cloud transformation to real-world cybersecurity. Mike has a passion with helping customers and partners know that their security controls are defending the organization without speculation. And last but not least, we have Corey Ansko joining us from Keller Schroeder. Corey serves as the Director of Information Security, and he is here to help us field any questions from a technical standpoint today. So without further ado, I am going to pass it to Rich, who will be covering the Cymulate overview.
Thanks so much, Mallory. I appreciate that very much. And thanks to everybody for taking some time to join us this morning. Really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of webinars out there, so definitely appreciate you guys taking a look at the Cymulate solution a little bit more closely. As Mallory said, I'm going to share my content here. As Mallory said, my name is Rich McGrath. I'm the Enterprise Channel Manager here at Cymulate. Very excited to be a part of this team. Very excited about the technology. And looking forward to working closely with Keller Schroeder and with you folks as well. So content to share here. So as we said, we are Cymulate. We're breach attack simulation software, and I'm going to give just a little bit of an overview of who we are and what we do, give you guys a little bit better understanding of the platform, and then Mike is going to actually go through a demo so you can see the platform itself, understand how you can build assessments and run them in your environment to test your security controls. So again, we are Cymulate. We are breach attack simulation software, and what that means is we're a SaaS-based platform that gives you the ability to easily build assessments that will test and monitor your security controls in your environment in real time. So it's a very exciting technology. It's a new technology in the market, and we provide a comprehensive platform in order for you to test across your entire security controls within your environment. A little bit of information about us as a company. We're founded in 2016. Our headquarters are in Tel Aviv, Israel, and our leadership team's background is primarily in IDF intelligence and also consulting as well. So we have a number of experts that have built our platform, and we're very excited about bringing this platform to the North American market. We are, again, as I said, we're headquartered in Tel Aviv, but we do have a number of offices across Europe and the US as well. The important information for you to be aware of when you look at the right-hand portion of this slide is the fact that we are very well funded, and we are a fairly new company, but we're very well backed, and we have the ability to continue to invest in the platform itself and in the technology itself. So we're continuing to upgrade and improve our platform and add new features and functionality, and we'll be talking a little bit about that as we go forward. This slide is a purposeful eye chart. So it's important to understand, and as most of you well know, there are a ton of different cybersecurity solutions out in the marketplace today. And it's very important to utilize many of these in your environment to ensure that you are as secure as you can be. But even after spending all of this money, organizations are spending over $100 billion in security products globally. And even after spending all of that money, oftentimes they're not truly able to answer the simple question, how secure is my environment right now? So that's what Cymulate's able to do, is it's able to help actually answer that question definitively, and not with a best guess scenario. It's actually with definitive data to back it up, with actual real attacks being launched within the environment. So when we talk about some of these questions, right? We look at all of the security products in the marketplace today, and are they able to, when implemented in your environment, are they able to help you answer these questions that you see up here on the screen? And oftentimes, unfortunately, the answer is you're not able to give definitive answers to these questions, even with these solutions. So when we look at our Cymulate platform, we're able to launch real-time attacks on your environment with known threat methodologies, with non-malicious code. So we're actually looking at running full-scale attacks on your environment to prove emphatically whether or not you are secure. And again, it's across all of the different areas of your overall security control environment. So when we look at the testing landscape overall and historically, we look at the threat landscape, and it's been very dynamic, right? Threat actors are able to change their methodologies, adapt their methodologies in real time, by the minute, by the hour, by the day. And if we look at the testing landscape, it's actually historically been quite static. We look at things like pen testing, red team exercises, and a number of other options. And these are kind of point-in-time exercises that don't give you the ability to run them in real time and run them continuously to understand what's changing within your environment and how to test against those changes, not only just the infrastructure itself. And again, when we look at things like pen testing and red team exercises, oftentimes it takes a long time to perform those tests, and it takes an even longer time to get the reporting back. So oftentimes, by the time you get the reporting to understand how your testing went, that information is actually no longer relevant because it's not actually up to date anymore. So again, our platform provides the ability to be very nimble. You can build and run assessments in a matter of an hour, and then the reporting outputs that our platform generates are able to are actually generated instantly once the assessment is completed. So you run an assessment for an hour, you instantly have both the executive report and the technical report instantly once that assessment has completed. And talking a little bit about each of those reports, the executive report, and Mike's going to talk a little bit more detail and actually show you some examples in his demo, but our executive report is kind of the cliff notes of the assessment. It's about 4 or 5 pages, clean infographics to really help you understand what happened within the assessment, and where there are weaknesses or gaps within your control environment, specific to each unique vector. The technical report, that's far more comprehensive. That's, as we look at it, that's the blueprint to your remediation steps and your remediation plan. That's where you're going to want to work closely with Keller, Schroeder, and the team to understand not only where do we need to prioritize as we look at our security budget, and where we need to allocate or potentially create budget to essentially protect against some of the weaknesses in our environment, but also not only just what's not working and where do we need to make a fix, but also what's working very well. So our assessments are actually going to tell you where your security controls are operating really effectively in your environment, so you know that you don't necessarily need to make any investments in those particular areas. Again, our vision as Cymulate is to be the platform that all CISOs are utilizing to measure their key performance indicators, and to be able to continuously and on-demand test your environment and understand exactly with real definitive data how secure your controls and your perimeter are in your environment. So this is our, again, our platform is essentially, it's a SaaS-based platform. We utilize 7 unique vectors across the entire APT kill chain. Mike's going to tell you a little bit more information about each of those vectors, but we're closely aligned to a number of security frameworks, including NIST 800, MITRE, Microsoft Dread, and CVSS3. And throughout the alignment to those platforms and those frameworks, what we have is we've got 7 unique vectors. We'll be adding an 8th very shortly. And what we're able to do is we're able to simulate an attack across the entire kill chain, from pre-exploitation through exploitation and post-exploitation as well. We also have a number of combined vectors. And within those combined vectors, you're actually able to either utilize some best practice assessments that our research team has built and added to the platform based on known new threat methodologies, or we also give you the ability to build your own assessments customized specific to some needs that you see within your environment for specific testing. And again, the key to the platform itself is around the results being immediate. So run the assessment in about an hour to an hour and a half. You've immediately generated 2 reporting outputs. One is an executive report. That's sort of like the cliff notes to the assessment. It gives a nice, clear infographic over a couple of pages, highlighting specifically your risk assessment score as it aligns to those frameworks that we're working closely with. And it also identifies within each unique vector how your controls performed. So within your email gateway, within your web gateway, and on down the line. It also gives you an understanding of where you need to prioritize as you're looking at the executive report and then the technical report as well. It gives you the ability to consult and understand with, obviously with the help from Keller Schroeder, you're able to consult and understand where you need to prioritize, where you need to allocate budget immediately, and where you're actually performing really well. So it's not only going to tell you just what you're doing wrong, it's also going to tell you what's going really well, what's fully performing within your environment. So you know that you don't necessarily need to invest any time or effort into those specific areas. You know where you need the help, you know where you need to focus. I talked a little bit about the executive report. There's also a technical report that's generated instantly. That is a full remediation report. So that is clearly your blueprint to remediation, where the platform actually identifies, what you have, what type of controls you have in your environment. Based on that environment, these are multiple options for you to essentially remediate against a potential risk that you have in your environment. I talked a little bit about the platform itself. One of the other key factors is that this is not necessarily a replace or a displace technology. The nice thing about the Cymulate platform is it's going to layer into the other security solutions that you have already in your environment. We have a number of vendor alliances ongoing with vulnerability assessments, SIEM solutions, EDR, and a number of other security solutions. So we're working closely with other OEMs to actually help validate the results that they're providing within your environment and the testing environment. And they're actually helping to validate the Cymulate results as well. So there's a lot of mutual benefit that you can get from layering Cymulate into the existing solutions you have in your environment today. Just a quick look at the vectors. Mike's going to go into a little bit more detail around this, but I just wanted you to see how we map essentially to the full APT kill chain. So Recon is a new vector. It's going to be released very shortly. But we actually, within Recon, we're going to get a better understanding of what is out and available in the public. So what, passwords, information, private information is potentially accessible on the web or other places. And then we move through testing the security perimeter controls, testing the people within your environment and phishing and security awareness there, and then through endpoint security, lateral movement, and data exfiltration on the post-exploitation side. Again, Mike's going to go into a bit more detail on each of these individual unique vectors. And then you see down at the bottom, immediate threats and full kill chain are the combined vectors I mentioned, where immediate threats, we've built out some specific assessments mapped to some known threat methodologies in the market today. Full kill chain gives you the ability to build customized combined vector assessments within your environment. So the key value to the platform overall is these three steps of the process. First, we simulate an attack on your environment using real threat methodologies and non-malicious code to execute. Second is evaluate. Work with your team and your the folks at Keller Schroeder to evaluate the results of this assessment, understand where you need to prioritize and exactly what you need to do to make sure that you're lowering your security risk assessment and providing a more secure environment overall for your organization. And then step three is actually the remediation. Again, that technical report is going to give you a full blueprint of all the remediation steps you need to take in order to ensure you're lowering that risk assessment score. So that's in a nutshell the value of the solution overall. I'm going to pass over to Mike Dinopoli. He's going to actually walk through a demo. You guys can see the platform itself in real time. And he's going to walk through the building of a few assessments, launch those, and really get into some of the technical detail around the effectiveness of our platform. So again, really appreciate everyone's time. I hope this helped give a little bit of an overview, and with Mike, you can really dig into the technical aspect of the platform and the value that it provides. Again, please let us know if there's any questions at all in the chat. We're very happy to answer those. And thanks again very much, Mike. I am going to stop sharing, and then I will pass the ball to you. See if I can do this here. I got you there, Mike.
Okay, there we go. All right, so go ahead and share out, and I'll just move this out of the way if I can here. Or we'll leave that there and I'll move this. All right, so the basic idea of what Rich was saying comes into practice when we start looking at the Cymulate platform itself. And what we're looking at right now is the Cymulate dashboard. We are a SaaS-based platform, so the majority of what you're going to be doing is via this website and the reports that it generates. There are a couple of components that go within an environment that's going to be assessed, but they're as simple as an email address that we could send email to and an agent. And the agent is just a software install for Windows, Mac, or Linux. You will not be putting agents on every device. Just to be really clear about that point, it's a representative number of devices. So if everyone in the environment uses the same firewall and the same anti-malware system, for example, then you just need one agent. That's it. Once that stuff's in place, then you'll be able to take advantage of what you're seeing on the screen right now. So on the left-hand side, we have all of the different vectors that Rich talked about. We're going to go into some of these. And on the right, we have the simulations in progress and the ones that have recently completed. We also have links to the reporting that I'll show everyone in just a few minutes. Now, the vectors are arranged on the screen in a specific way. So they're the layers of security that an attacker would have to go through to get to their eventual goal. The outer set, email gateway, web gateway, and web app firewalls are designed to be what attackers go after when they're going after systems, not necessarily people or specific devices. And these are everything within Cymulate is, of course, vendor agnostic. Whatever tools are in place, especially if you're working with a group like Keller Schroeder, where they're going to make sure you've got the right tools in place for your organization, that's what we will simulate against. Moving in one layer, we have exploitation attacks. So these are threat actors going after users or specific devices with things like phishing attacks and malware and malicious links, which would challenge the endpoint security, the desktop, laptop, server security. And then finally, if a threat actor were to gain a foothold, then they could start propagating within whatever network they gain the foothold on, and that would be lateral movement. And they could attempt to remove information from the environment, data exfiltration. Now, Rich had mentioned two different types of simulations. Single vector simulations, which is what these circles out here represent. This is dozens or hundreds or thousands of different methods and techniques that are focusing on a specific set of security controls. We also have combined vector simulations, as Rich mentioned, with full kill chain and also our immediate threat intelligence system, which we'll show you. That allows you to pick and choose specific techniques and methodologies from multiple single vectors and string them together into an entire chain of events, which is how it gets its name, full kill chain. The numbers that you're seeing inside the circles, the numbers out of 100, are what are known as the Cymulate scores. Cymulate scores are a weighted average of the results of an assessment compared to those 4 security frameworks that Rich mentioned: Microsoft Red, CVSS3, NIST 830, and the MITRE attack framework. Since each one of them puts emphasis on different objects, we do the math, or rather the Cymulate platform does the math, and produces a unified score from 0 to 100. Higher scores indicate higher risk, so you want to keep these numbers as low as possible. Now that we've stepped through the kind of higher level, what the system looks like, let's dive in and see how this works. So if we were to want to assess the effectiveness of endpoint security, whether it is a signature and heuristic-based scanner system, or like what traditional anti-malware would be, or whether it is one of the next generation systems that does behavioral detection or machine learning or AI, the Cymulate platform can effectively simulate those different forms of attack. And we could do it from anything from, for example, our best practice, which looks at both. So we have about 1,600 or so AV files. AV files, which are used in multiple simulations, are not executed. As a matter of fact, many of them aren't even executable, but they each have a known malicious signature. So if we drop these to disk over time, the system is not going to try to move all 1,600 at once. We don't want to overload anything. But over time, we will try to write each of these files to disk through an agent that's sitting on a machine that has the anti-malware tools in place. And none of them should be writable. They should all be quarantined or otherwise blocked because they all have known malicious signatures. In addition, in the best practice, we will send over 360 scenarios. Now, scenarios are fully executable. They're designed to be run. The agent will kick off the execution of these files. And while they will perform malicious actions, they will do so in a safe way. And I can give you 2 great examples of that. If we're simulating a Trojan, a fairly common form of malware these days, then the scenario, when it runs, may attempt to do DLL injection or attempt to gain administrative permissions. But it's going to do that in order to pop up a message box or to open the calculator app. So we can perform an effective simulation without putting anything at risk. The other example is ransomware, since obviously that would include checking whether or not something can be encrypted. And to simulate that, the scenario or the agent will create a directory of fake files. And if the scenario is not stopped by your anti-malware tools for whatever reason, those fake files are what will be encrypted. So we're not endangering actual user files or company data or anything of that nature, but we are able to take the same types of steps that a threat actor would take when they're trying to perpetrate that particular type of attack. If you are only using behavioral-based or you're only using signature-based, we of course also have templates, as we call them. These are run books or playbooks that are designed for those specific types of simulations. And you can create your own template whenever you need to. And that can fine-tune a specific set of simulated events that you want to occur. And you'll see this as a point of commonality across nearly all of our different vectors. We will provide some templates. We will give you the opportunity to create your own. And that allows you to define what will be simulated. You'll also tell us where it will be simulated. In this case, because we're testing endpoint security, you'll identify an endpoint. And when it will be simulated. And this could be a single simulation, a one-time event, either immediately or scheduled. Or we could set this up to re-simulate on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And the goal here is that since the cybersecurity topology and world changes on a regular basis, you should be simulating new threats against your environment on a regular basis. And so automating these simulations is quite popular. Monthly is the most popular, but we have seen it done weekly. And during periods of extreme change, such as migrations, we've even seen it done daily to make sure that nothing is slipping through the cracks. And that's about it. You'll define what we'll be simulating by declaring a template, including one that you can make yourself. You'll define where it will be simulated and when it will be simulated and how often, and then you hit launch. Now, once that process initiates, the remainder of the simulation is completely automated. The Cymulate system will send the appropriate files and scenarios and whatever else is required by the simulation you've chosen to the agent, or if it's an email gateway simulation, to an email address. Web app firewall would attempt to execute commands against the web server. So the what does tend to change. The where tend to change depending on the vector, but the overall process of what are we simulating, where are we simulating it, when are we simulating it, is pretty universal, actually. You'll be able, of course, to keep track of simulations in progress, and when they complete, you'll be immediately able to see and generate reporting information. So the reports are created in real time as the simulation occurs, as each piece of that simulation is performed. The Cymulate platform is assessing if it was successful, if it was partially successful, if it was unsuccessful, and it is tabulating all this information into reportable formats. When the simulation is complete, you can view the results of the entire assessment. This assessment was for an endpoint system, and to set the stage, this environment had both signature-based detection and behavioral-based detection. And it did incredibly well in signature detection. Nothing got through. It also did incredibly well in worm detection. And in ransomware and Trojans, it didn't fare poorly, but 31% is still a little too many things that are getting completed. So let's look at ransomware. And if I click on this, it will take me to a page where I can see each of the scenarios that was executed. Because remember, this particular simulation included both signature recognition tests and scenarios. And here are all the ransomware scenarios that were executed. Some were unable to execute at all. That's great. Some, like this one, were completely executed, which means that the anti-malware tool did not stop this attack. And had it been a real attacker, this would have been a very real problem. So that's something that we'd want to look into immediately. But a much larger section of these partially executed. And this one that I'm highlighting right here is a great one. And if we click into this, we can see every step that was taken by the scenario as it executed, including where it was stopped. In this case, when the scenario attempted to submit a fake or booby-trapped print job, the anti-malware system killed the scenario, which is what we would expect it to do. And of course, since it killed the scenario and there's no more executable to run things with, the rest of the steps become unreachable or non-applicable. And this overall is not a horrible result because it did stop this method of attack from being successful. However, when we look a little closer at the steps of the attack, there are two that jump out. One is step 3, created a native hard link, and the other one is step 4, triggered scheduled tasks. Now, these are telling signs for an anti-malware tool, because when seen together, they, in 99.999% of cases, indicate foul play. They indicate malicious intent. But our anti-malware system allowed both of them to execute. So what happened there? If I click more info, the system will give me an explanation of what it did. If it's part of a known security framework, this one, for example, is part of MITRE, we'll link to it. The system will tell me what footprints get left behind. In other words, how could this be detected if it occurs within an environment? And mitigation. And we'll always list as many mitigation techniques as possible, and Keller can assist in figuring out which of these techniques is going to be the best fit for your environment, since they're working with you and they know your environments quite well. In this case, there are a couple, there's actually 5 or 6 different ways that we could mitigate this, but the 2 major ones are that behavioral-based tools can be tuned to recognize this as malicious behavior, especially if it launches from a non-protected directory. Like if it's not coming from the Windows directory, then it should be considered hostile. We could also change some group policies in Active Directory. And which one is the best fit is going to be up to you and with assistance from Keller to see what is going to be the best fit. So not only do we tell you at a very high level what was able to execute and what was not, but we could even help you fine tune in circumstances where the anti-malware tools did stop it, but could have stopped it sooner and probably should have stopped it sooner. And so we could help you lower those numbers as well. And since the system with the online view is useful but doesn't cover all the bases, we also have offline reporting. As Rich mentioned, each of our simulations has a minimum of 2 offline reports. A technical report, and that is going to be all of the data points that were in the UI that we saw. And an executive report that I will show you in just a moment that's more designed for either personnel who may not be technically trained, or they are technically trained, but they may not be cybersecurity trained, to give them the information that they need without drilling into the finer details, which are definitely available in things like our tech report and the UI, etc. And we're going to see an executive report in just a moment, so we'll hold off on that for a sec. Depending on the vector and the selections made in the template, we will have multiple other forms of reporting as well. So in this case, we can provide the results as a comma-separated value text file. We did send those antivirus files, the signature files, so we can provide a list of the actual signatures and whether or not they were detected. And if we're integrating with your SIEM system, or if you have an EDR that allows for API integration, then we can even tell you if the alerts and events that we expected to show up in that system's reporting were actually reported by that system. Now, we spoke about the executive reports briefly, so let me just go through this real quick. This is a report from a different lab that we ran an endpoint security simulation in. It did have both forms of protection. And the executive reports are designed to let someone who, as they say, may not have technical training, or they may not have cyber-specific training, gain 2 critical pieces of information. What needs to be addressed, and why, from a business perspective, is it critical that these things be addressed? So we could see right up front, 43 out of 100, that's the Cymulate score. We do describe how we got it later in the document if they have an interest in that. But that's a moderate risk. So there are things that we could definitely work on here. And if I look at the attack summary, if I am, say, a CFO, I may have some technical training, but I'm probably not a cybersecurity expert. And I need to know what needs resources applied to it: budget, consulting hours, man hours, etc. And if I look over here, I could see that everything is amber in this section, and that is the percentage of completed attack steps. So this is my what needs to be addressed. And to address this, to lower these metrics, I could look to the left and see that half the ransomware that we tried, and a sizable portion of other types of malware, were able to execute. And that's a really solid business case for dealing with these amber metrics over here on the right. Too many forms of ransomware are successful or potentially successful, and that is something that the business absolutely must address. So I know what is going on, and I know why it is critical that I correct what is going on, and I can allocate budget accordingly. Additionally, we can benchmark against others in the same industry. There's about 25 industries to pick from. We also have a sort of general catch-all industry, actually called general, and you'll be able to see your overall risk score as compared to others. Everything is, of course, completely anonymous. And then as you're reporting to business decision makers or to the CEO or to the board or whomever you need to report these things to, we'll also show you performance over time, specifically over the last 10 assessments that were run. So if you're running this monthly, you will be able to show that these risk metrics are going down and that the risk is going down as technologies are fine-tuned, as new technologies are brought to the table to combat some of this stuff, and show a return on investment of those consulting services, of that budget, of those new products. Finally, since this is a report that is designed to be utilized by folks who may not have cybersecurity training, we define all of the terms that were used in the report. So if they're looking at this a week later or 2 weeks later, they can understand what it is that we're talking about when we say that too many Trojans got through and things like that. And there's links to more detailed reference material for each one of these. And we'll give you an overview of how we created the Cymulate score as well. So if they want to know where that 43 out of 100 came from and why it fits into the moderate risk category, we'll walk through that. That is a decent overview of a single vector simulation, in this case, endpoint security. And it's similar for the other single vectors as well. But let's take a look at a multi-vector simulation. And one of the most frequent questions we get is, well, if I'm simulating against all the different components of my security system, why do I need to do these multi-vector simulations? And the reason is that the different vectors can act as compensating controls for each other. Something that may not be recognized at the firewall can be recognized by anti-malware solutions. Something that is recognized by an email protection system may not necessarily require that the endpoint protection system also recognize it, because if it comes in via email and it can't get in, you're still safe. So the multi-vector systems are designed to look at how these different sets of controls work when they need to work together cooperatively. And if we look at, say, this one, so by the way, immediate threats intelligence, our threat research team is connected into CISA here in the United States, CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team organizations throughout the world, public and commercial and private threat feeds. And so we're constantly looking for any new threat that begins propagating across the internet. We're tracking it from the time that it's discovered as a proof of concept or a theory. And then as soon as we see it actually being used in an attack, we will, within about 24 hours, create one of these simulations. And you can see there was one posted just today. It's an unfortunately almost daily occurrence. Now, if we look at this one, this is a form of the iced ID attack. It generates itself by being sent in as a password-protected zip file that contains a Word document, and that is an attachment to an email. So the first thing we will do is create a simulated email, and we will send it to a designated address to see if this is discovered and stopped by email protection systems. Whether the message is delivered but without the attachment, whether the entire message is quarantined, whatever your systems are set up to do. Around the same time, an agent running on a desktop or laptop or VM or wherever you decide to put it will reach out to Cymulate's cloud systems and try to download both the zip and the Word doc with the malicious macros that are part of this attack. And so we'll see, does the firewall prohibit these files from being downloaded? And if you're using techniques like SSL inspection or content disarm at the firewall, it should not be allowed. It should be blocked from being downloaded. And of course, if it is successfully downloaded, then we're going to try to write it to disk. And we'll see if the endpoint systems properly recognize that this is these files are part of a known threat. And then we'll be able to report on that. And in the reporting section, let's take a look at one from a while back that most folks would be familiar with, and that is Bluekeep. So some time ago, there was a new version of Bluekeep that exploited a known flaw in remote desktop. And the way that it worked was that it would trick users by taking over a legitimate link on a legitimate site to go to an illegitimate download. And so the agent tried to download the file, and it was successful. So we're not catching it at the firewall. It was also successfully written to disk. And that means that the endpoint protection did not recognize a known malicious file. And so what this means, what Cymulate has told us here, is that the environment itself is vulnerable to this attack, this specific attack, because the two controls that would defend against it are not defending against it. There's no compensating action going on here because neither of them were able to block it. And if I am also talking to, say, a vulnerability scanner, in this environment we used Tenable, but there are a couple choices to choose from, then the Cymulate system can also request a list of devices that need to be patched because they are currently vulnerable to this exploit. So what has happened here is Cymulate has said the environment is vulnerable and then pulled a list of machines that are now exploitable. There are no compensating controls that would defend these machines, and this machine is not patched against this particular type of attack. And so we can very quickly create a blueprint of what needs to be done immediately. The machines in this list, thankfully there's only one, but however many there are, need to be immediately patched. Even if it means that they're going to have production downtime, this is a very serious flaw. It is currently propagating, and these are not protected. So they need to be patched right now. And then we can go back and look at the endpoint antivirus. Is it not getting proper database updates? Is it not? Does it need to be tuned? Keller can help with any of those things, by the way. And the web gateway. Are we doing proper SSL inspection? Is stuff able to bypass that inspection? And again, Keller's going to be able to tune the existing system or recommend a different system that would be able to provide that functionality. And so just from one simulation, we were able to detect that there is a significant risk of threat, know which systems needed to be immediately patched, and know what the next steps are in terms of remediating the environment as a whole. So that would be our demonstration of both of the tool itself, and that's this dashboard that we're looking at and the different things you could do with it. What a single vector simulation looks like. We did it for endpoint security, but it looks quite similar for just about any of the other single vectors. And what a multi-vector simulation would look like, where we were combining web gateway and endpoint security to determine if the environment was protected against a specific threat using that threat's specific methods and techniques. And of course, all this information would be sent to you and to Keller, and you'd be able to work out a blueprint of how you can address these things, and then resimulate once the mitigation has been performed to make sure of two things. One, that nothing was missed, and much more importantly, especially with the help of Keller Schroeder and their team, they're most likely not going to be missing anything, but to make sure that the correction of the stuff that was in the first report didn't accidentally create new security holes as they corrected all of the existing security holes. Or, and this is one that we've seen quite a bit, that the primary set of security holes were masking additional issues. So, for example, if SSL inspection was not operative and it's made operative, we can then see that there are pinpoint issues within the SSL inspection system that need to be addressed when we do the resimulation and see, okay, that issue was corrected, but it was hiding the fact that there are these pinhole gaps in that system. So let's go back and correct those and then simulate again. And keep doing this even when everything looks okay, so that if something should crop up, because you upgrade an application, because you change an internet provider, or just because it's been 6 months since you fine-tuned the endpoint system, Anything that crops up over time can be identified quickly and mitigated quickly. All right, so let me go ahead and pass this over to Corey. And there we go. Corey, all yours.
Thank you, Mike, for that. Certainly appreciate it. That was a great demo and great information. I want to open it up, if we could, just do some questions. I know that there's several in the chat, and if we could, let's go ahead and walk through those, because I know that several of those are pointed to the technical team. So let's kind of walk through those, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And I do have to give a shout out. I have Carissa Eatman in the room with me, and she's been monitoring the questions. So thank you, Carissa. And the first one we have from Samir is, does the assessment reports provide best practice advice for remediation?
So it provides multiple methods of remediation. The specific number will depend on what we found and how many ways there are that are generally recognized to mitigate it. But that's why we partner with companies like Keller Schroeder, because they know your environment, and they're going to be able to say, of the 4 or 5 that could mitigate this issue, this one is the one that fits best in your environment. So the Cymulate system provides as many as possible, and we work with partners like Keller Schroeder to fine tune that to be the best fit for your environment.
Thanks, Mike. Our next question from Brad is, if you test the threat of the day, since new threats come out all the time, is this included with the service?
So we'll let Corey and his team have a discussion with you about all the licensing, but there is, we break it down by vector to give you the overview, and the immediate threat intelligence system is one of those vectors. So if you are licensed for immediate threat intelligence, you are able to perform all of the simulations. You can even automate it so that anytime Cymulate posts a new immediate threat simulation, which is unfortunately a daily thing at this point, it will automatically be simulated against your environment. So the answer is yes. If you're licensed for the immediate threat intelligence, it includes all of the new threats that we are posting. But one additional thing on this topic, if we find a new method or technique as part of an immediate threat, it is rare, but it does happen. Most new threats are actually rehashed old threats, but where we do find a new method or technique, within about 7 days, it also goes into the appropriate other vectors. So if it's a new way to use email to attack, then it'll end up in email gateway within about a week.
Awesome. So our next question is, during the multi-vector threat, are you running it against all agents or a specific set of agents?
So the multi-vector, well, all of our agent-based testing is aimed at a single agent. You would pick that agent. You can have multiple agents within an environment if you have multiple anti-malware tools or a complex network configuration, but each individual simulation will be aimed at an individual agent. When we say it's a multi-vector simulation, what we mean is that the methods and techniques that make up that chain of events cross multiple vectors. As an example, an attack may come in via email and involve an executable that gets dropped onto the endpoint because the email contained a link, and they click the link and they download that file to an endpoint. But that's all still involving one agent, because that agent is a sort of gold standard for the organization of what security tools and controls are being used.
Okay, next, along those lines, we have, is licensing based on total number of agents?
Yeah, so Corey, did you want to talk a little bit about the licensing? Or we can have Rich do it, whatever works best for you.
Yeah, Rich, do you care to jump in and just kind of walk through those licensing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, be glad to. So from an overall standpoint, there's 2 primary methods of procurement. So there's a resale model, and then there's an MSSP model as well, where you can actually utilize Keller Schroeder to maintain and manage and run the assessments and manage the remediation for you as well. In either one of those routes to market, We are the pricing structure is essentially built out by unique vector, so you can choose any or all vectors, whether they're unique or combined vectors. And then once you've decided which vectors you want to utilize on the platform, it is based on a number of endpoints in your environment.
Thanks, Rich. And we'll cover it at the end, but you can always reach out to Corey and his team for any specific questions on licensing. So we have a couple more. We have for endpoint security assessment templates. Is there best practices or recommendations for what simulations to set up?
So the answer to that is yes. And as a matter of fact, nearly all of our vectors have a pre-built template called Cymulate Best Practice. There are also sub-templates for endpoint, for example, that focus on just behavioral detection, just signature detection. So we're flexible in that. Each one of those would be a best practice for that particular type of scenario of simulation. But they also have these sort of general Cymulate best practice templates.
Thanks, Mike. We have from Brian, can you customize parameters of the executive report, i.e. showing that trending over more or less than the last 10 assessments?
Yes, and that was that one of the two graphs in the executive report, and we of course can provide you with a sample of it. The performance over time graph shows exactly that. So it's over the last 10 assessments that were run. So if you're automating this to run once a month, it's going to show the last 10 months. And the goal there is to show whether the overall risk goes up or down from simulation to simulation.
Perfect, thank you. We have, if you have a next-gen endpoint solution that focuses more on the kill chain, and not on signatures, can you exclude certain attack methodologies such as signature testing?
Yeah, in two ways. The first is that we have the system ships with more than one template for each vector, and endpoint's a great example. We do have the best practice, which is both signature and behavior. We also have pre-built templates that only do certain types of behavioral methodologies, worms, ransomware, office documents, etc. So there's pre-built templates for each of those, and a pre-built template that's only signatures, that doesn't do any behavioral testing. So yes, you could very easily, even without going to a custom template, you can exclude this or exclude that. And then of course, we allow you to create custom templates, which would allow you to further refine the simulation parameters.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Michael wants to know, since only one client is necessary for homogeneous network, does that keep the cost down or does cost scale with network size?
So as Rich had mentioned, the cost doesn't scale with network size. It scales with the number of endpoints that you have. So it's a little bit of a tricky question only because the more endpoints you have, the more complex the network is likely to be, but it's not a given. It's not a given thing. It's, if you have a very complex network, but a very small number of endpoints, it's not going to change the cost. It's by endpoint. So probably, but not definitely. And that's why we'd love to have you have a discussion with Corey and his team to really get a good idea of what the licensing would look like for your environment.
Awesome. It looks like we have one more. We have, if when retrieving a file via the web gateway, the file is blocked by a firewall or some other protection, will the endpoint still be able to be tested with the file in some fashion?
Yes, so there are a couple ways that we can do this. First off, the web gateway simulation data is separated from the endpoint simulation data, and it's designed to sort of segregate that as much as we can. So for example, you may have to set a rule that allows specific communication so that the endpoint test can be done, but it would still block the files that we're attempting to send and receive when it's over the web gateway. So the answer is yes, we have methodologies that could be used to do that properly to make sure that we're not creating false negatives.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike, and we will turn it back over to Corey.
That's great information. Thanks everyone for those questions as well. I think that was certainly beneficial, just kind of walk through some of that. Obviously, the time is limited on what we can do as far as our hour block here. But if you do have questions or further questions, feel free to send those to me. We can provide that information in the chat, or Carissa and or Mallory will be sending out communication following this presentation. And we would love to have a meeting with you to talk through some of these items regarding Cymulate, and then also answer any questions that you may have. One additional thing that I want to provide everyone, and we'll also send this out as far as the follow-up emails concerned, just wanted to show you just the breadth of information that we have here at Keller Schroeder from a security standpoint. We obviously can provide a lot of services, and this is just a kind of a listing of those. As you can see, the breach and attack simulation is the item that we just spoke with Cymulate about, Mike and Rich. But also we do many other things from penetration testing, compliance, email security, web security. So it's a pretty comprehensive list. I don't want those that are on the call to think that we only do one or two things, because we do really cover the breadth of security. Obviously, security covers many different things in our world today. So if you have questions, if you want to discuss further security items with us, we'd be happy to have those conversations with you, and feel free to ping me anytime you feel you need to. And we'll send this out to everyone. Carissa and or Mallory will be sending this just so that you have it for your reference for future use. That is all that I have, Mallory, for now. I'll send it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey.
Absolutely.
So just a few things to wrap it up while he's passing that over. I do have some exciting news to share. We had a social hour scheduled with Cymulate in March, and unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that was postponed. However, that is back on the books, and we will be communicating more details with you as we learn them. So stay tuned for that and some more information. And if you have any, as Corey mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to he and his team at securitysolutions@kellerschroeder.com. And this email address will also be included in our follow-up email to you guys. And then we will also reach out to you individually if you were a lucky winner of our wireless charger today. So thank you guys for all your great questions. We appreciate it. And again, thank you for your time today. We appreciate you being on, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.